Canto 27. Stopping at the end of the bridge, Cal thought of what he'd see next. Images filled his brain and paralyzed him. I don't want to do this anymore. Sophie, having stopped, looked concerned. We can't stay here. We're so close. The exit is just across the frozen lake. Looking around, she spied 2 decent-sized boulders. She motioned Cal over. The 2 sat. Here, she said, taking off her watch. Wear it until we get to heaven. Cal took it and began to inspect it as he would a piece for the shop. On her wrist, it looked like it might have been an army-issued piece. Upon closer inspection, it was so much more. On the face, it looked like it contained a tiny galaxy or nebula. It swirled in the face calmly. So calmly, it calmed Cal just looking at it. How do you read this? It gives you the time you need. Think about leaving hell. See what it shows you. She tapped on the watch because Cal was staring stupidly at her. Looking down, he shook his head to think. He imagined walking out of hell. Oh, how great that would be. Then the nebula began to shape. Letters began to appear. Just 4 more stops, he read out loud. See? She consoled. We're almost there. Then she began to cry. Big, wet tears. Sorry, she sobbed as she wiped away nothing in front of her. I'll be okay. Just give me a minute. Thinking of the only thing that changed, Cal held the watch out. Here, take it back. Sophie shook her head, pushing it gently back to Cal. The fate of Santos is out of my hands. It's not helping me to look at it every time you turn your back. She shook her head more violently. You need it more than me right now. Then she lost it again. With reverence, Cal put on the watch. If only there was something she could borrow in return, something comforting. He thought of shawls he couldn't reach in his shop, impossible items from their location. Aggravated at his inability to help, he stood and jammed his hands in his pocket when his right hand landed on something flat, hard, and round. His heart skipped a beat. Pulling out the object confirmed what he believed the moment he felt it. It was the button. Sophie! He exclaimed. He held it up with what he knew was the goofiest grin he had given since coming to hell. What? She asked, clearly confused. I put this in my pocket and forgot to give it back. Sitting back down on the rock, he examined it. Black, like hers. The same design on the head of the button. The same shank style, with the tunnel in the back for the string. He laughed out loud at how exactly the same it was to the one in Sophie's house. He held it out to her. Here! It's for you! Looking in his palm, her eyes grew huge. In awe, she picked up the button from his hand. Where did you get this? Remember when I got stuck in that level? He had been stuck in many levels. You know, the one where I kept collecting things. This was the item I was first drawn to. I picked it up and I was sucked in. Cal couldn't stop smiling. He had wanted to give her that button so bad, and he had it on him the whole time. It can give you peace. He could feel moisture fill his eyes. When I was in your bedroom, I realized it was the same button, and I wanted to grab that one for you, but everything was so awful. Cal, this is perfect. She hugged him. The two were now crying together in a hug. When they pulled back, she stared awestruck at the button before shaking her head and pushing it back. There's a reason you got to keep this. I can't. Pushing it back in her direction, Cal countered. What if it were for you now? Pushing it back again, she countered his counter. No. It feels like it's yours. I just feel it. Cal looked at the button and the watch. Holding it out, the button to her, he said, what if it were for you in this moment and for me later? Take it until we get to heaven. Then we'll trade back. Sophie shook her head. No, she protested, but not with feeling. Cal placed the button in her hand and wrapped her button-holding hand in both of his. Just hold it for now. You said Santos gave it to you for a time like this, so borrow it for now. Staring at his hands, she nodded. Cal's hand slowly left her one. Thank you, Cal. You're welcome, Sophie. And thank you, he added, holding up his watch-wearing hand. She gave a short nod. We've come a long way as a team since this started. More me than you, Cal confessed. It's more we than me, Sophie corrected. Maybe I've already worked through my brokenness, but that doesn't mean I don't still have cracks. I won't lose those until heaven, and Fred and I aren't going there without the boys. Still, I haven't felt my cracks in years, and you helped me feel them. And that's a good thing, Cal skeptically asked. Sophie smiled, nodded, and wiped away a remaining tear still on her cheek. She kissed the hand clutching the button. Sometimes we need to know how the world has changed us for the better or worse. Oftentimes, we feel it in our cracks. Looking up into the darkness, she continued, I forgot I was created to be something. I'm a mother. I'm a teacher. I'm a wife. All those things were broken by my death. My husband mended my place as a wife. God, I love that man. The other two, I forgot. I forgot what it means to care for someone who needs to be cared for. I forgot what it means to teach something that would otherwise be out of reach. I forgot because those places hurt so very much. They were broken in my death, and yes, they were mended by God, but those spaces had to be worked and used by me. And then came you. Sophie's smile widened. I didn't mean to touch your cracks, Cal lamented. I'm glad you did, she responded. She turned her head and thought, let's see. What's next? Let's take away some of your fear. She looked in thought before finally grimacing. That bad? Cal asked. I mean, if we can get through this next one, the rest should be less gruesome. Gruesome? Cal yelled. What did they do? Sophie looked lost, which was not a good look on someone who was supposed to be his guide. I brought just one soul with the order to not let them speak, so I didn't. I just talked nonsense until they were dropped off and no longer my responsibility. What were you told about me? Cal wondered out loud. I'm not given information on those possessed because they're not supposed to remember if I was ever there. Thoughts of whatever was waiting for him flitted away. Am I going to forget this? The realization Cal just had clearly showed on Sophie's face. Maybe, she confessed. And you. I'll forget you too. Maybe Cal wanted to forget about the horror, but not her. If he could keep anything from this experience, it wouldn't be buttons or watches. It would be to remember her. Meanwhile, she seemed as saddened by the very real truth that both had realized. I would say so, she answered. You would forget all of it if you forgot. Sophie's brows knitted as she looked away. I don't like that at all. I don't either, Cal agreed. I don't want to forget you. I don't care what I see. But once again, Sophie had that lost look on her face. We shouldn't worry about what you will or won't remember. Right now, we should get you through hell. Yet now, it didn't seem to matter what was next or how he'd get through it. If what was coming was to forget, what was the point? Still, he nodded. Yeah, let's just move to the next crap show. Sophie put her hand on Cal's shoulder, nodded, and that was that.